Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
It is the one thing that you have a limited amount of. When it comes to money, well, you can make more money. When it comes to time, there's a fixed amount. There's only so much. 24 hours in a day. What do you choose to do with that time? What are you forced to do with that time? We're going to focus on time management when it comes to caregiving. And many of us caring for aging parents, maybe a spouse, a loved one, it can get very frustrating. It can also sometimes even paralyze you when you feel like, I don't have enough time in a day to do all of this. She is somebody who coaches people through all of this. Yes, a life coach for caregiving. She's Marika Humphreys, and she's back with us. How are you?
I'm doing great. I spent my time this weekend camping and being in nature and doing hiking and kayaking. So I'm feeling very refreshed right now.
Good for you. Time well spent. You said kayaking, and that is what I'm doing in 45 minutes, maybe 90 minutes, because I'm waiting for a quick storm with my older daughter, waiting for a quick storm to go by. Not even a storm, just showers. They just popped up out of nowhere. But I think we'll be good. But that's on the plan. And you know what?
Yeah,
You got to
fantastic.
take that time. Right?
Yes, yes, and you can absolutely kayak in the rain. I did that a couple weeks ago. So
So did I. It was a moonlight kayak, and I think the strawberry moon, and it just started
yeah,
raining, and it was but it wasn't rain. It was just a quick shower. It was actually refreshing. It was like, give me more. This feels good. Just don't want a heavy rain, but yeah, all good.
yeah, yeah,
This
yeah.
caregiving situation related to time can be frustrating, challenging in that you have so many things that you need to give time to: the care, logistics, doctors, yourself, the rest of your family. Oh, then there's your job. This is probably one of the most important segments we've done about caregiving. I'm thinking, I'm not really sure. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a big one. And again, I think the challenge that most caregivers have is this is a role that we take on often unexpectedly, and it can evolve over time as well, where it might start out with, you know, your caregiving responsibilities are only a few things or an hour a week, and that can escalate or that can go up and down. So most people, I think, don't take the aren't deliberate about how they think about their time when they become a caregiver, and first the recognition that it does take time. It will take time, and there is it also, I think, not just with the actual time it takes, whatever your caregiving duties are, but there's an emotional component, there's energy, and there's
Mm,
often physical energy that go with that we just need to keep in mind and appreciate, and I think really give deliberate thought to, which is probably the biggest, my first tip from the get go is that it is really something you need to think about how you spend your time and then take into consideration that caregiving takes time. You
mm.
can't just keep adding it to whatever you're already doing, which is, I think, the approach that most of us do. We tend to think short term, and if we're caregiving for a short term, that is possible. Sometimes you can just cram more in the week. We all have the ability to, push through and have a busy week. But over time, that is not sustainable, and you will burn out, as many caregivers do. You will get frustrated, you'll get exhausted, you'll get resentful. That's when all the
Mm.
cascade of bad things happen. But it really does start with just thinking about and appreciating that caregiving takes time, and it's going to take some mental, emotional, physical energy with that time. So it's not always just easy time spent either. So yeah, thinking about it deliberately, I think, is the first thing to do as a caregiver.
How do you how do you manage it? Like, you only have a certain amount of time. You have all these things to get to. should you be mapping your day out? Should you be setting aside, all right, I'm given this. I got to follow up with the doctors. I'm just throwing things out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that between this time and that time. But of course, there's got to be some flexibility. Can't get them on the phone. So now you got to pivot that over to another spot. Where I'm getting at with this is, should you be using a certain app? Should you be doing something, or just keep it a log of what I'm going to do, plan?
I think you can do a bunch of different things. I mean, I don't think there's one solution to that answer. But what you shouldn't do is try to keep it in your head.
Yeah.
Our heads are not the best. Our minds or our brains are not best at keeping lists of things. So you definitely need to write it down or track it in some way. And to your point, like, how do you manage it? I mean, this is nothing revolutionary, but again, I think we just don't do it when we think of caregiving, and it's prioritize. You definitely have to prioritize. And that means like prioritizing, especially if you're caregiving while working or while parenting or while doing, other responsibilities in your life. What are the most important? And I would make like a list of 3 to 5 things, and maybe of your whole day, or you could do it from a week to week basis. I think that is definitely situation dependent, and there isn't a right way or a best way. But writing down your top priorities, and this is the hard one for people, being willing to let other things go. The nature of prioritizing means one thing is more important than another, and we have to make decisions around that. And that, I think, is hard. We everything feels important, but that means if everything's important, then nothing's important because it's all the same, right? And in reality, I think it is true. Some things are more important, and you need to ask yourself that question and answer it. I mean, that can be hard. It causes us to make decisions, but at least it's a starting point. And when you identify 3 to 5, what are my 3 to 5 most important things? And let's just say for the week, what are my caregiving duties? What are my work duties, parenting duties, whatever other responsibilities you have? And then what can I let go, or what can I let go for now? I think that's another strategy when it comes to time management that I often tell my clients is there may be periods where you just need to be willing to let things go. And the example I often give is like, maybe you don't clean the house this week or next week. Like, that's something that you will survive. It will be okay. It may not be your preference. It may not be what you like, and it may bother you a little bit, but sometimes it's something that you can let go, and sometimes other things are more important. So those two things, I think, thinking about it deliberately, using some sort of aid to track it, or either write it down, old-fashioned planner. Lots of people are like, love their planners or paper calendars. I like to use my my Apple Calendar or Google Calendar. There's tons of apps. All of those are just strategies. But the biggest key is not trying to do it in your head. Definitely get it out on paper. And then I would say to that is be willing to revisit it pretty frequently. I mean, maybe that's every week at the end of the week. Maybe that's once a month. Maybe that's once a quarter. But again, with caregiving duties, I think they can often fluctuate in the time it takes, and sometimes you might find that you have more things you have to do as a caregiver than you did a couple months ago. So without thinking about it consciously and really taking stock of that, you will just end up feeling that overwhelm and sort of exhaustion that often comes up.
So hearing what you said, cleaning the house, right? That's important to some. So are there situations that come up where somebody's doing all these different things as a caregiver, and then, I got to clean the house too. And then we can say that, all right, maybe not a priority to clean the house today because you had, this week, you had a lot of other things going on. But then there's a piece of you that says, I like a clean house, and now I'm letting things that I appreciate go. Or when it comes to time, I like doing this. Now I don't have time for me. And then you get frustrated. And then maybe because other family members might not be helping, then you get resentful. And then it starts building up. And it all came from time. How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's a good question because that very much happens. I think it happens frequently. And one, I went back to like, what are the most important things? We tend to give our time to our external responsibilities, again, our job, other people, caregiving. But one of your most important things might be you have to exercise like daily in some form or several times a week. Like that is one of my priorities. I have made it a priority for a very long time, and it is a priority for me. And while I can maybe go a day or two, and feel okay, I would not let myself, unless it would have to be a dire emergency for some reason to not go without some form of exercise. So that would be
Hmm.
a priority for me. And I think well, sometimes it's just giving yourself permission to put things that are important to you personally, things that make you feel good, that rejuvenate you, that sustain or nurture your energy. And maybe it is a clean house. Like I do know many people who are like that. Like that's important. It's important to me, but it is also one of those things that I can let go. Then maybe so that's going to be different for somebody. But I think the key there is identifying what is important for you personally for your mental and emotional health. And that is something you probably should prioritize in that list of 3 to 5 things, right? It doesn't always have to be for the external people. And because when we don't do that, I mean, you pointed out, that is when we get bitter, resentful, angry, and all of those emotions are not going to help you feel any better. And they're not going to give you any more time either. In fact, I wrote an article about this topic a couple of years ago, and I wrote I listed a bunch of time wasters, and some of the things that waste time. One of the ones I listed, which isn't something we would necessarily think about, but it's worry and avoiding our emotions and overwhelm.
Hmm.
Those are things that actually waste our time because we don't function as efficiently when we're in worry and when we're feeling overwhelmed. We get distracted easily. We can't focus. So, kind of circling back to making sure that the things that are important in your life for you personally are included in your priorities is ultimately a time saving strategy because when you're not sitting there stew if you don't do that, you'll sit there stew in resentment and then maybe anger that your siblings should be helping more or somebody should be helping more, and that's going to waste time. So it
Hmm.
all relates to each other.
All right. So I'm seeing this even clearer now. You shouldn't waste time on the things you can't control. So if it's a family member not supporting, you can't make them. You can be angry. You can tell them how you feel. I really feel that you should support us and help us. They're your parents too. Again, just hypothetical here.
Yeah,
But then it's not, it ends right there
yeah,
because you can hate
yeah,
them to the end of time for not jumping to the plate. But if that's the way it's going to be, where's it going to get you? Number one. And then number two, um, you need to find the time for the things to support you. Do you feel if you move things around and work it, there's always going to be time, like for yourself to work out, things like that?
yeah. I mean, again, I think one another thing we talk about a lot in coaching is constraint. It's another way to say priorities, but it's really hard for us to do that. But constraint means limiting what you do or include in your life in order to focus on the things that are your priority at the moment or for that period of time. So constraint is, again, it's prioritizing. And it is hard for us to do. We all resist it. But that is one when you constrain, maybe it's the amount of TV you watch, which might on the one hand feel like a luxury and is something you do, I need to decompress, but it does come at a cost. And the cost might be you stay up too late watching Netflix and then you don't get up and go work out, which is really your bigger priority because it's how you feel good about yourself, how you feel good in your body. So those constraint is another way to think about it, I think. And another just really important thing when our time is always full. But, I have coached, in fact, I know I've talked about one of my clients who's a doctor, and the things she manages to accomplish in her day sometimes just astound me. She had young children. She's a doctor. She has some like executive kind of responsibilities with the hospital she works at. And the crazy thing is every single one of us, young or old, rich or poor, doesn't matter. We all get allotted the same amount of time in a day. So how do some people accomplish so much or get so much done and others don't get as much done? And when you really start wrapping your head around that, and it doesn't mean that you need to be this super productive person, but what are the differences? And I think one of them is prioritizing and constraining, and then the time wasters that we can often sort of indulge in that, take up time that we don't always realize. So, yeah, I do think when we prioritize things, we make time for it. I mean, simply put.
And there's a place for sitting around watching Netflix. Sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, this is something, I mean, I kind of choose a go-to show. And I sort of, this is where I constrain. Okay. This is my example of constraint. When it comes to TV shows, there is endless TV right now. I mean, there's endless things. Some people get on YouTube, some people scroll. Like there's endless media that we can distract ourselves with. So for me personally, I do like to watch a show at night. It helps me sort of transition and sort of relax, but I keep one show. I only watch one show, and I only like now because, there's all these great series and, again, endless distractions, but I don't really force myself, but I keep myself to only one series until I finish it. And then I'll start a new series or I'll, resume a series. But that helps me constrain because I could easily, watch episode after episode after episode, or I can easily watch, that looks really good. I want to start that episode tonight or that new series tonight. But I know it's just, it's a rabbit hole that is not ultimately productive for me. And I prioritize sleep. So that is sort of my way of constraining and still doing something I enjoy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably a really good example of constraint.
I'm a TV squirrel. I start, I'm over here. Then I'm over here. Oh, I'm going to check this out. Well, it's not that, but wait, I started that, but I can't. I got to look at it. And that's not my personality. I just can't focus on TV. I'll be intentional. I'm going to relax on the couch tonight. I'm sitting there, turn TV on, and then I'm on my phone or I'm petting the dog or doing something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm not a true TV person, but whatever works for you. Just it's your me time. However sometimes we need to take that time just to ourselves. But I think it's also, like you said, the priorities. I think I would imagine going down the caregiving rabbit hole where everything is important. Everything is important. And then you lose track of everything because you didn't prioritize things, right?
Yeah. And on the reverse side of that, because it's equally as important. I mean, when we talk about prioritizing, I think we think of, the things that are at the top, the most important things.
Sure.
But it's equally important to also figure out what can you eliminate, let go of, stop doing for a period of time, get some help with, outsource. Like that is the other half of the list is also important to pay attention to. So it's not just what are the most important things, but what can I let go of? What can I
Hmm.
just stop doing? That I think is almost as important as picking what are the most important things. Because most people try to approach it like, I just need to do it all. And so some I'm going to half-ass and some I'm going to, focus on. But we need to cut things out, right? That is probably the easier approach to time management is what can you cut out? We don't usually do that. I mean, it's the same like when we cleanse our space, right? We make decisions about what do I no longer use? What's just clutter? What do I not like anymore? We need to do the same with our time. Who are we spending time with that is draining or
There's a good one.
I
There's
know that. But we don't give deliberate thought to those things. We kind of
yes,
do a lot out of habit. So I really
yes.
think giving deliberate thought to the little things that you do throughout your day that are unnecessary, time wasters, energy sucks. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
having too much stuff in your house can be a time waster because you have to clean more or you have to move things around or it simply just takes energy to deal with your stuff and that takes
Sure.
ultimate time.
Or you may be hanging out with somebody who is great because they tell you what you want to hear. So you're like, oh, I can't believe my life. Blah, 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 blah. Then they're like, ah, yeah, you got blah, 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 blah. They're just repeating it back. There's a place for that. But at the same time, all they're doing is just weighing you down. They're
Yeah.
not being, they're right.
Oh yeah. Yeah, people, that's a big one. I mean, everybody knows or probably has encountered someone in their life or at periods of their time where they are in contact with someone who drains them in some way or doesn't add to them. And
Sure.
those interactions weigh on us. And when you're caregiving, those are the things that you have to be really strict about. I mean, maybe it's like it could even be like a weekend out with friends that you just always do, but isn't really your most favorite thing, or you don't enjoy it as much, but it's sort of habit or expected. That's something again that just take a look at, really reevaluate. Is this something I want to do? And I like adding for people like for now because we
Good.
we tend to think like, oh, if I don't do this, if I stop doing this, I'll never be able to do it again. But caregiving is not, while it may be something you do for an extended period of time, it won't be forever and other things change in life. So you can be willing to change things up for now, right? It can
Yep.
think kind of like this won't necessarily be forever.
Thank you for all of these thoughts. It is, I'm sure, plagues so many who, even if you're not caregiving, I think there's certain things here that we've said that can support anybody in terms of managing your time. Marika, how do we connect with you? If somebody wants to take the time and just bounce these things off of you, maybe engage you as a coach for caregiving, how do they do that? And I think we might have lost your connection. Oh, there you are. You're back. Okay.
On Yeah, I'm getting a little bit not great on my side. Um, and coachmarika.com. There is a link there to get on my calendar. You can set up a consultation with me if you are interested in getting support as a giver. So yeah, our website, coachmarika.com. Stop shop.
Excellent. We have a little bit of a, and then we just lost her. It looks like, yes, Coach Marika, Marika.com. And thank you so much for being here today. We will be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.